Hello BookTube and welcome to part 16 of Science Fiction and Fantasy, the continuation of my 2020 library tour. So in this video, we are finally moving to the conclusion. There are two more shelves to go, but we are starting the last bookcase, which is the one my brother built for me about 2 years ago. And despite its rough appearance, I do quite like it. So let's get started, because this is going to be quite long and probably a little bit ranty. Although that said, going through my library tour, there are a lot of books that I'm thinking I could probably do without. Why do I have some of these books that I'm probably building up to a purge sooner rather than later? But anyway, speaking of books that I'm seriously questioning why they're placed in my collection, The Tiger's Daughter by K. Arsenault Rivera. This is the story of two young women, Oshizuka, who is an heir to the Hokaran Empire, and Barsali, who is the heir to the high chieftainship of the Quarren people. Their mothers, respectively, were the greatest of friends, and this friendship, they intend to filter it down to their daughters. Despite a rocky start, the two do become friends, and Oshizuka is sent to live with the Quarren for a number of years. And during that time, they eventually become lovers and go on adventures where they face a rising threat to the world from a bunch of imprisoned demons and discover that they each have magical powers. And Oshizuka becomes empress. And so the story is told intermittently from Oshizuka's perspective in the present when she's the empress, and in the past through letters from Barsali. And I don't like this novel. I've read and bailed on it, and I finally did finish it, and I still didn't like it. It just, the whole letter, kind of like, while it's telling the reader the story, it's also something that Oshizuka already knows, so it's sort of like an as you know, which is off-putting. I also found the two characters, particularly Oshizuka, to be deeply unsympathetic, uninteresting. They're really annoying. And I thought the world building has more than a whiff of Orientalism about it. While I'm certain that was unintentional, that the sort of the meaning of the Hokaran Empire was unintentional, the way Rivera sort of presents the world building and the characters, and who in that, basically, I don't remember any male character being not antagonistic in one shape or form. That it sort of creates, and given the decaying aspect of the Hokaran Empire, a bit of sort of colonialist archetypal narrative towards, say, Qing China or India. It's like this sort of, I don't know necessarily if Orientalist is quite the right word, since Orientalism tends to refer more to the Ottoman Empire, although, there is that sort of commonality of how the Ottoman Empire India and China were all sort of depicted in the late 19th century, that this novel does sort of go into. I mean, it is unintentional, but it is there. And so, yeah. And given that, I'm not entirely sure why I have the sequels. The Phoenix Empress and the Warrior Moon, except for some sort of completionist desire. Because I mean, because I don't I don't like The Tiger's Daughter, and I try to read it once after I finished it to try to, like, okay, maybe a reread will improve my opinion on it, and it didn't. And I'm kind of sort of thinking about trying to read the entire series sometime in the new year, and I'm thinking, well, I don't actually like the first book. What am I doing? But anyway, I'll figure that out later. Let's move on to another book in which I'm like, why do I have? Because I bailed on it when I read it a few years ago. And that is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. So this is a near future cyberpunk story in which the character Wade is sort of this gamer, and he's presented with the opportunity, and many other players of this worldwide game are basically inheriting the wealth of the creator of this game. And I didn't make it too far into the book. I think it's almost guaranteed to be something that's going to annoy me intensely if I did read it any deeper. And quite probably Sword Art Online is probably a much better take on this story than Ready Player One. Anyway, picked that up from, I want to say, the Friends of the Library, the last Friends of the Library book sale summer thing. That's where I picked that up. Next up is a novel by Alistair Reynolds. This is Pushing the Ice. I want to say this is a standalone space opera novel, but I'm not sure. Another book I did not particularly care for. The Rugged Blade by Christopher Ruz, which is apparently book one of the Century of Sand series. So, this is the story about a mercenary, an assassin who worked for this Dark Lord, Dark Sorcerer, who discovered that the sorcerer was using his daughter for esoteric, arcane purposes. And so the mercenary basically kidnaps his daughter and flees, hoping in the hopes of finding something that could defeat the sorcerer, who is also his ex-lover. And the sorcerer goes in pursuit. And the book's just terrible. I didn't like any bit of it. So, I thought the main character was too common, and it just, yeah. Next is The White Mists of Power by Kristen Catherine Rush. I think she used to have a blog where she talked about the business of writing fantasy. That was actually quite enjoyable. Next is The Mask of the Sun by Fred Saberhagen. Not entirely sure where I picked that one. I'm probably friends at the Library of Books at Old Nook. X-Heroes by Peter Clines. This is a superhero novel set in a zombie apocalypse. Reaper's Gate, a tale of the Malazan Book of the Fallen series by Stephen Erickson. Redemption Arc by Alistair Reynolds. This is, I want to say, the second book in the Revelation Space series. Or maybe third book. One of them. Got it from Hewitt Public Library, and I want to say I either picked this up from the Friends of the Library book sale or Golden's Book Exchange. So of the Revelation Space novels that I've read, the only one of the series that I've read is Chasm City. This is about a young man who basically he sort of is the hunt of the main character who was a mercenary is hunting the man who killed his girlfriend or something. It's been so long since I've read it, but I remember enjoying it. I did bail on it the first time I tried it, but and having another go at it, I did quite like it, but it has been over 10 years since I've read it. But I want to say it's a revenge story where a mercenary is hunting his previous employer who murdered his wife, who was also the mercenary's mistress or something like that. And there's a bit of other shenanigans going along as well. Next up is Halls of Law by V.M. Escalada. And then we have The Dark Mirror by Juliet Marillier, which I read and bailed on earlier this year. It's a historical fantasy set during the end of Christian Britain and sort of the Anglo-Saxon period. And I didn't find it interesting. I thought if the story had started, I think, later in the story, it might have been much better than it was. Next are two novels by Marshall Ryan Maresca. This is The Impostors of Eventil and The Alchemy of Chaos. These are books 2 and 3 of the Thorn of Denton Hill series. So what Marshall Ryan Maresca has done is he's basically sort of created around the city of Meridian a series of interlocking trilogies that recently culminated in like a final trilogy. So I think they're like 4 trilogies in all. It's sort of kind of, I would say it's probably like what Netflix did with their Marvel TV shows. Basically, you had Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and those 4 series led to the Defenders miniseries eventually. So it's sort of the same thing, and Maresca's now moved on to another series in a more dieselpunk direction. Even though the pub sheet says it's steampunk, if there are motorcycles, if on the cover you look like a greaser, or a biker gang member, or some combination of the two. It's diesel punk, not steampunk. Got it? Uh, Next we have some books by Michael Moorcock. Stormbringer, one of the Elric books. The Sailor on the Seas of Fate, another Elric novel. The Vanishing Tower. Not Elric, this is Count Brass. The Champion of Garethorn, another Count Brass novel. And The Bull and the Spear, which is the fourth book of Quorum. And then we have Dahlgren by Samuel R. Delany. This is his post-apocalyptic science fiction novel that I've never actually quite gotten into. And I really need to. Even though I did try Triton a few months back and didn't quite get into it. So, yeah. Anyway, next is an anthology called Griot, a Sword and Soul anthology, edited by Mullen J. Davis and Charles R. Saunders. So, Sword and Soul is a subgenre of sword and sorcery in which the focus is on African-inspired fantasy. Started by Charles R. Saunders in his Imaro series. Returning to Ricardo Pinto, this is The Standing Dead, the second book in the Stone Dance of the Chameleon series. Picked this up from West Waco, well, the Waco-McLennan County Library during one of the library sales. I want to say it was the main one that ended up getting withdrawn. Silent Hall by N.S. Dolkart. I want to say this is one in which gods are acting badly. Nether by Samuel R. Delany. The Fall of the Towers. The Pursuit of the Screamer by Anson Dibble. To Green Angel Tower, Part 2 by Ted Williams. This is the final volume in the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn series. It's Book 3, Part 2. Because the mass market paperbacks were too small, or I couldn't handle all of it. Heroic Fantasy, edited by Gerald W. Page and Hank Reinhardt. This is a sword and sorcery anthology. Riot Baby by Tochi Onyebuchi. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Or Onyebuchi. No, Buchi. So this is, I read it earlier this year, I think in January. This is a story about a young woman who has this power to teleport. And she leaves her home and basically starts her own life out of a very sort of toxic family situation. Her brother is eventually arrested and sent to prison and is later released, and basically they reconnect. I thought the novel, or novella, since it's considered now a novella, even though it's just more of a short novel, doesn't quite work. Largely on the world building. I think the story itself is really good. It's just the world building, because the brother, I think, was born during the Rodney King incident in Los Angeles, or the Rodney King riots in LA in 1992 or 3, around that time. And the story takes place kind of near future, so, but the brother doesn't seem to be that old. So I think the world building and the timing of that kind of doesn't quite work out. Or at least I don't remember it quite working out. The Once and Future King by T.H. White. Stone of Farewell by Ted Williams. This is book 2 of Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. And then we have The White Witch of the South Seas by Dennis Wheatley. Uncharted Seas by Dennis Wheatley, which was adapted in the 60s, late 60s as Lost Continent, which I quite liked. Or I think what I watched of it. I don't know if I ever actually finished it. Then we have Northwest Smith by C.L. Moore. So Northwest Smith was her kind of sort of space opera, planetary romance hero. C.L. Moore also created Jirel of Joiry, her famous sword and sorcery heroine. Next up we have A Ship of Smoke and Steel by Django Wexler. And then we have The Death of the Necromancer by Martha Wells. Judgment Night by C.L. Moore, which I want to say is just a general collection of her short fiction. And finally, Classic Black Magic from Dennis Wheatley. This is an omnibus that includes The Devil Rides Out, To the Devil a Daughter, and Gateway to Hell. So the middle novel, To the Devil a Daughter, is a standalone novel. And then The Devil Rides Out and Gateway to Hell are novels in the de Richelieu series, in which the Duc de Richelieu, descendant of the famous Count de Richelieu's family, or Cardinal de Richelieu from the Three Musketeers. Sort of he founds or becomes involved with the new Musketeers, or the modern Musketeers, who are composed of Englishmen and an American. And they go on varying adventures. And The Devil Rides Out, the group have to rescue the youngest, no, not quite the youngest member, from a satanic cult who wishes to destroy the world. And in Gateway to Hell, another one of them gets involved in the same group. And I like The Devil Rides Out. It was adapted in the 60s also by Hammer as The Devil Rides Out, or in America, The Devil's Bride, starring Christopher Lee as de Richelieu. And it is an amazing movie. I love that movie. Didn't get a chance to watch it this year, but hopefully next year I'll be able to watch it, because it usually plays during TCM's horror marathons in October. So anyway, BookTube, that wraps up the first shelf of my brother's bookcase. I will be back tomorrow with parts 17 and 18, and we will be done. Ooh, this has been exhausting. Anyway, BookTube, I will see you tomorrow. Thank you, have a great afternoon, and please stay safe.